Welcome to my channel. What if I told you that 95% of your thoughts today were identical to yesterday? And yesterday? And yesterday? You're stuck in a biological loop that neuroscience calls the predictable self. But there's a way out that most people never discover. Now, here's what most people get wrong about breaking free from this pattern. The reason this biological loop traps you isn't because you lack willpower or motivation. It's because you're operating as matter, trying to change matter, playing by the rules of Newtonian physics, where everything in space and time takes massive energy to create. But what if there was a completely different approach? Today, I'll reveal how quantum physics, combined with neuroscience, shows there's an invisible field of energy and information that exists beyond your senses. And when you learn to access it, you can create reality in completely different ways. Plus, after each breakthrough insight, I'll give you a practical technique you can use immediately to start this transformation. Music. Quick question. How many of your thoughts today were exactly the same as yesterday? If you're honest, it's probably 95%. And that's the trap that's keeping you stuck. I want you to imagine something with me. For a moment, picture your mind as a beautiful garden, but instead of planting new seeds, you've been watering the same weeds for years. Every morning, you wake up and unconsciously tend to the same thoughts, the same worries, the same mental patterns that have been growing in your consciousness since yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. This isn't your fault. It's simply how your brain was designed to operate. You see, your nervous system is essentially a recording and playback device. When you encounter the same information repeatedly, your brain creates what neuroscientists call neural superhighways, well-worn pathways that become automatic. Think about how you drive to work. You probably don't consciously think about every turn anymore, do you? Your brain has automated the entire process. The same thing happens with your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Here's what this looks like in daily life. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind starts playing the same mental soundtrack it played yesterday. Maybe it's worry about money, frustration with your relationships, or that nagging feeling that you're not where you want to be in life. You reach for your phone and consume the same type of information you did yesterday. The same social media feeds, the same news stories, the same conversations with the same people about the same topics. By the time you're having your morning coffee, you've already locked yourself into the same emotional and mental state that you experienced the day before. Your brain, being the efficient machine it is, says, "Oh, we're doing this again today," and begins firing the same neural networks, releasing the same neurochemicals, creating the same thoughts, which lead to the same choices. And here's where it gets really interesting from a quantum perspective. When you make the same choices, you create the same experiences. When you have the same experiences, they generate the same emotions. When you feel the same emotions, they influence the same thoughts. When you think the same thoughts, you make the same choices. You've created what I call an information loop, a closed circuit where the same data keeps circulating, creating the same reality over and over again. This is why you might feel like you're living the same day repeatedly, just with small variations. You're not imagining it. You're literally recycling the same information through your consciousness. And since information shapes reality at the quantum level, you keep collapsing the same version of your life into existence. Now, I want to be gentle with you here, because this isn't about judgment. You're not broken and you're not doing anything wrong. This is simply how the human brain operates when left to its own devices. Your nervous system is actually trying to help you by creating predictable patterns. It's an energy-saving mechanism that kept our ancestors alive. But here's what's fascinating and also a bit frustrating. Traditional self-help approaches often fail because they try to create change while operating from the same informational foundation. It's like trying to bake a chocolate cake using only vanilla ingredients. You can follow the recipe perfectly, work harder, stay more motivated, but you'll never get chocolate cake because you don't have chocolate in your kitchen. When you consume the same information, talk to the same people, read the same types of books, and expose yourself to the same ideas, you're essentially asking your brain to create new results from old data. And your brain, being logical, says, but we've tried this before, and here's what happened, and it gives you more of the same. This is why people can read dozens of self-improvement books, attend countless seminars, and still feel stuck. They're trying to change their output without changing their input. They're attempting to think their way out of a thinking problem using the same information that created the problem in the first place. Here's your first breakthrough technique: the information audit. Right now, list the top 5 sources of information you consume daily. Social media, news, conversations, books. If you want different results, you need to replace at least 3 of these with completely new information sources. This simple switch breaks the cycle within 24 hours. But creating new neural pathways is just the beginning. What neuroscientists discovered next will blow your mind. Here's what blew my mind. Your brain creates new neural pathways within hours of learning something new. But here's the frustrating part that neuroscientists discovered. The moment you encountered that first breakthrough about breaking free from your information prison, something remarkable happened in your brain. Within hours, new neural connections began forming. Your brain started literally rewiring itself, creating fresh pathways that didn't exist before you heard those insights. This isn't metaphorical. It's measurable, observable, and happening in your brain right now. But here's where most people get tripped up. And it's something that used to frustrate me deeply until I understood the science behind it. You can have the most profound breakthrough, feel completely transformed, and then wake up 3 days later feeling like you're right back where you started. You might even question whether the insight was real, or wonder if you're somehow broken because the change didn't stick. Let me share with you what neuroscientists have discovered about how your brain actually works. There's a principle in neuroscience that says nerve cells that fire together wire together. Think of it like this. Every time you have a thought, your brain creates an electrical pathway. When you repeat that same thought, you strengthen that pathway. Over time, these pathways become like well-worn hiking trails through a forest. They become the path of least resistance for your thoughts to travel. Now, when you learn something new or have a breakthrough insight, your brain creates a brand new pathway. It's like clearing a new trail through uncharted territory. At first, this new pathway is fragile, barely visible, like someone walking through tall grass for the first time. The old pathway, your previous way of thinking, is still there, wide and well established, like a superhighway, compared to your new footpath. Here's what happens to most people. They learn something transformative. They feel excited about the new possibility. But then life happens. They get busy, distracted, or stressed, and their brain automatically defaults back to the superhighway of familiar thoughts. The new pathway gets overgrown and forgotten. Not because the insight wasn't real, but because the new neural network wasn't reinforced enough to become stronger than the old one. This is exactly what happens when someone learns to drive. Do you remember your first driving lesson? Every action required intense concentration. Checking mirrors, turning the wheel, pressing pedals. Your brain was building entirely new neural networks. But through repetition and practice, those conscious actions became automatic. Now you can drive while having a conversation, listening to music, or thinking about something completely different. The neural pathways became so well established that driving became unconscious. The same principle applies to learning a musical instrument. At first, every note requires deliberate thought and finger placement. But after months of practice, musicians can play complex pieces without consciously thinking about where their fingers need to go. Their brains have literally rewired themselves. Through repetition. Language acquisition works the same way. When you first learned a new word in a foreign language, you had to consciously translate it in your mind. But after hearing and using that word repeatedly, it becomes automatic. Your brain has created neural networks that make understanding effortless. The fascinating part is that your brain doesn't distinguish between different types of learning. Whether you're learning to drive, play piano, speak a new language, or embody a new way of thinking about reality, the same neuroplasticity principles apply. Your brain wants to create lasting change, but it needs consistent reinforcement to make new pathways stronger than old ones. This is why most learning fails without proper reinforcement. People attend a weekend workshop, read an inspiring book, or watch a transformative video, and they expect their lives to change permanently from that single exposure. But neuroscience shows us that lasting change requires what I call neurological installation, the process of repeatedly activating new neural networks until they become stronger than the old patterns. Think about how many profound insights you've had over the years that seem to disappear within days or weeks. It wasn't because the insights weren't valid. It was because you didn't understand how to install them neurologically. You were expecting your brain to completely rewire itself from a single exposure, which is like expecting to become fluent in French after one conversation or master the piano after one lesson. The beautiful news is that once you understand this process, you can work with your brain's natural neuroplasticity instead of against it. You can intentionally strengthen the neural pathways that support your growth, while allowing the old patterns to naturally weaken from lack of use. Here's the neuroplasticity hack that neuroscientists use. The 24,487 rule. Review new information after 24 hours, again after 48 hours, then weekly. For a month. This creates permanent neural pathways. Most people skip this step, which is why they forget 90% of what they learn within a week. Once you've wired this new understanding neurologically, you're ready for a revelation that will change how you see existence itself. Music. I'm about to tell you something that sounds crazy, but neuroscientists have proven it's true. You're living in two different realities simultaneously, and most people only know about one. Let me invite you into a thought experiment that might shift everything you think you know about existence. I want you to imagine just for a moment that I could somehow temporarily take away all your physical senses. No sight, no sound, no touch, no taste, no smell. Your body would still be there, but you couldn't perceive it through any sensory input. In this state, what would you be? You wouldn't be gone. You'd still be you. Thinking, aware, conscious. You'd still have thoughts flowing through your mind. emotions moving through your being. Perhaps memories arising spontaneously. You might even find yourself more aware than usual, more present, more connected to something deeper. What you discover in this sensory-free state is pure consciousness. The you that exists beyond what your five senses can detect. This simple thought experiment reveals something profound. You exist in two distinct realities simultaneously. The first reality is what I call the material world. Everything you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. This is the world of form, of objects, of physical matter. It's the world your senses evolved to navigate. And it's the only reality most people acknowledge exists. But there's a second reality that's equally real, equally present, and equally important to your existence. This is the immaterial world, the realm of consciousness, thought, emotion, intuition, and pure awareness. This reality doesn't depend on your physical senses to exist. In fact, it's often more accessible when your senses are quiet, like during meditation, deep sleep, or those moments of profound insight that seem to come from nowhere. Here's what's fascinating. Most people spend their entire lives focused exclusively on the material reality, completely unaware that they're simultaneously existing in this vast immaterial realm. They wake up and immediately start processing sensory information. What they see in the mirror, what they hear on the news, what they feel in their body, their attention gets completely absorbed in the world of form, and they lose connection with the world of consciousness. Think about your own experience for a moment. When was the last time you were fully present to the immaterial aspects of your existence? When did you last notice the spaciousness of your awareness, the quality of your thoughts, or the subtle energies moving through your being? If you're like most people, these experiences might feel foreign or even mystical. Not because they're rare, but because you've been trained to focus exclusively on material reality. But here's where it gets really interesting. From a quantum perspective, the immaterial reality contains vastly more information than the material world. In your dreams, you access scenarios, solutions, and insights that your waking mind couldn't have created through logical thinking. During meditation, people often receive profound guidance or clarity about situations that seemed impossible to resolve through material analysis. In moments of deep intuition, you might suddenly know something without being able to explain how you know it. These aren't accidents or coincidences. They're glimpses into the information-rich field of consciousness that surrounds and interpenetrates your physical existence. While your five senses can only detect a tiny fraction of what exists, visible light, audible sound waves, tactile sensations, your consciousness can access a much broader spectrum of information. Consider how solutions to complex problems often come to you when you're not actively thinking about them. You might be in the shower, taking a walk, or just waking up when suddenly the answer appears fully formed in your awareness. Where did that information come from? It didn't come through your senses. It emerged from the immaterial field of consciousness that you're always connected to, but rarely access intentionally. Scientists have found that many breakthrough discoveries throughout history came through dreams, meditative states, or sudden insights rather than through logical material analysis. The molecular structure of benzene, the periodic table, the theory of relativity. These world-changing insights emerged from the immaterial realm of consciousness. What's even more remarkable is that when you learn to consciously access this immaterial reality, you discover that it's not separate from physical reality. It's the invisible foundation that gives rise to material experience. Your thoughts, emotions, and consciousness aren't produced by your brain. They're fundamental aspects of reality that your brain translates into physical experience. This means that when you shift your attention from exclusively material focus to include immaterial awareness, you're not escaping reality. You're accessing a more complete version of reality. You're recognizing that you exist simultaneously in both dimensions and that your material experience is constantly being influenced by immaterial factors like your thoughts, beliefs, emotional states, and quality of consciousness. Here's your consciousness expansion exercise. Tonight, before sleep, spend 5 minutes with eyes closed, mentally stepping back from all physical sensations. Ask yourself, who is the one observing these thoughts? This simple practice starts training your awareness to access the immaterial realm where infinite information exists. And this immaterial realm isn't empty space. It's teeming with something that could change everything for you. What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this, you're swimming in an ocean of invisible information that could solve any problem you have? But you can't see it. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're surrounded by invisible information. Your phone is receiving text messages, emails, and calls through electromagnetic waves you can't see. Radio stations are broadcasting music through frequencies you can't hear. Without a receiver, Wi-Fi signals are carrying vast amounts of data through the space around you, completely undetectable to your senses. Satellite signals are passing through your body this very moment, transmitting information across the globe. You accept all of this as normal because science has proven these invisible fields of information exist even though you can't directly perceive them. But what if I told you there's another field far more fundamental, far more powerful that contains not just information but the very fabric from which all reality emerges? Quantum physicists call this the quantum field, and it's the most profound discovery in modern science that almost nobody talks about in practical terms. This field isn't empty space between objects. It's a living, intelligent, responsive medium that contains infinite frequency, energy, and information. Every possibility that has ever existed, or could ever exist, vibrates within this field as pure potential, waiting to be collapsed into physical reality. Here's what will shift your entire understanding of existence. You are not separate from this field. You are not a solid object moving through empty space. When quantum physicists look at matter under the most powerful microscopes, they discover that atoms are 99.9999% empty space. The particle of matter that seems solid is actually a vibrating wave of energy that appears and disappears thousands of times per second. You are not made of matter. You are made of energy, frequency, and information, temporarily organized into the pattern you call your body. This means you're not separate from the quantum field. You are the quantum field, temporarily expressing itself as a human being. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold is a frequency pattern within this field. You're not just in the ocean of consciousness. You are waves in that ocean, constantly creating ripples of influence that extend far beyond what your physical senses can detect. Think about it this way. If you're listening to music right now, the sound waves are causing your eardrums to vibrate, which sends signals to your brain, which interprets those vibrations as music. But the music isn't really in the sound waves. It's a pattern of information that only becomes music when it interacts with a receiver capable of interpreting that pattern. In the same way, the quantum field is filled with patterns of information that only become reality when they interact with consciousness, your consciousness. This is why your attention is so powerful. Where you place your focus literally determines which patterns of information from the quantum field get translated into your experience. When you focus on problems, lack, or fear, you're tuning into those frequencies within the field, and they become your experienced reality. When you focus on possibilities, abundance, or love, you're accessing completely different information patterns which create entirely different experiences. Imagine walking into a room where 10 different radio stations are playing simultaneously. You can only hear chaos until you tune your radio to a specific frequency, and then one station becomes clear while the others fade into background noise. Your consciousness works exactly like that radio receiver. The quantum field is simultaneously broadcasting every possible reality, success and failure, health and illness, love and loneliness, abundance and scarcity. But your attention determines which frequency becomes your lived experience. Most people don't realize they have this tuning ability, so they unconsciously tune into whatever frequency matches their dominant thoughts and emotions. If you've been thinking about lack, your consciousness automatically tunes into the scarcity frequencies within the field. If you've been feeling anxious, you naturally attune to the uncertainty and fear patterns. Not because you want those experiences, but because that's where your attention has been habitually focused. But here's the incredible part. Once you understand that you're operating within this responsive field of infinite possibility, you can learn to consciously choose which frequencies to tune into. You can deliberately shift your attention from problem-focused frequencies to solution-focused ones. You can train your consciousness to access information patterns that most people never encounter because they never think to look for them. This isn't wishful thinking. It's applied quantum mechanics. When you shift your internal frequency through your thoughts, emotions, and focus, you're not hoping the external world will change. You're accessing different information within the field, which naturally manifests as different experiences in your physical reality. The quantum field responds to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned on the same frequency. When you're thinking abundance while feeling grateful and taking generous actions, you create a powerful unified signal that the field can clearly receive and mirror back to you. But when your thoughts say one thing, your emotions feel another, and your actions contradict both, you create static instead of a clear signal. This is why some people seem to effortlessly attract what they want while others struggle despite working hard. It's not about worthiness or luck. It's about the clarity and coherence of their signal within the quantum field. Those who naturally align their internal frequency with their desired outcomes access information patterns that create synchronicities, opportunities, and solutions that seem to appear out of nowhere. Now that you understand this field exists, here's what's going to frustrate you about how you've been living your entire life. This next part is going to make you angry at yourself because you'll realize you've been using the hardest possible way to create change in your life when there's been an easier way all along. Now that you understand you're living in both material and immaterial realities simultaneously, and that you're swimming in an ocean of quantum information, I need to share something that might initially frustrate you. There are two completely different ways to create change in your life, and most people have been unknowingly choosing the most difficult path. The first way is what I call matter trying to change matter. This is the approach most people use because it's what they can see and touch. In this method, you use physical force, willpower, an endless effort to push against material reality, hoping to bend it into the shape you want. You work harder at your job to make more money. You go on strict diets to force your body to change. You chase after people to create relationships. You hustle and grind, believing that if you just push hard enough, long enough, reality will eventually surrender to your will. This approach feels logical because it matches what you learned in physics class about Newtonian mechanics. 4. Every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Push harder, get more results, apply more force, create more change. And while this works to some degree, it's exhausting, slow, and severely limited by the amount of physical energy you can sustain. When you operate this way, you're essentially trying to rearrange matter. Using matter, you're using your physical body and conscious mind to manipulate physical circumstances. It's like trying to change a movie by grabbing the characters on the screen instead of changing the film in the projector. You might create some temporary disturbance, but you can't fundamentally alter what's being projected. Think about how this feels in your own life. When you've tried to force a relationship to work, how much energy did it require? When you've pushed yourself to achieve a goal through pure willpower, how sustainable was that approach? When you fought against your body's natural tendencies, how long before you burned out? This method demands enormous energy because you're working against the natural flow of how reality actually operates. The second way is what I call operating through the quantum field instead of trying to manipulate matter with matter. You learn to access the invisible realm of information and energy that gives rise to material reality. In this approach, you align your consciousness with the patterns of information that correspond to your desired outcomes, and you allow the field to reorganize material reality around that new frequency. This is how synchronicities work. When you're aligned with the right frequency in the quantum field, the perfect person calls you at exactly the right moment. The ideal opportunity appears just when you need it. Solutions to problems emerge from seemingly nowhere. Information flows to you effortlessly because you're tuned into the frequencies where that information exists. This is how flow states work. When athletes, artists, or entrepreneurs describe being in the zone, they're accessing quantum field intelligence. They're no longer trying to force outcomes through effort alone. They're allowing higher information to flow through them, creating results that exceed what their individual mind could have planned or executed. This is how intuitive insights work. When you suddenly know something without being able to explain how you know it, you're receiving information directly from the field rather than through your five senses or logical reasoning. You're accessing data that exists in the immaterial realm and translating it into practical guidance for your material reality. The reason most people exhaust themselves trying to create change is that they're operating exclusively in what I call the virtual reality experience of material focus. They're so absorbed in manipulating the projection that they forget they can change what's being projected. They spend all their energy rearranging the furniture instead of recognizing they can move to a completely different house. When you understand that material reality is the result of information patterns in the quantum field, you realize you can create change much more efficiently by shifting your internal frequency rather than forcing external circumstances. Instead of working harder, you learn to tune differently. Instead of pushing against what is, you align with what could be. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop taking action. It means your actions become inspired rather than desperate, aligned rather than forced, effective rather than exhausting. You start operating from quantum intelligence instead of just physical effort. Here's your reality shifting protocol, the attention inventory. Every hour for 1 day, notice where your attention is on problems, on material things, on past, future. When you catch it on material concerns, deliberately shift to asking what information is available in this moment that I can't sense. This trains you to access quantum field intelligence. So the question becomes, which reality will you choose to operate from? Let's bring this full circle. You started trapped in the predictable self, that 95% biological loop. Now you understand the 5-step pathway out. Break your information prison. Rewire your neural networks using the 2-for-8-7 rule. Recognize you exist in 2 realities simultaneously. Connect with the quantum field of infinite information and choose whether you'll create as matter struggling against matter or as consciousness accessing field intelligence. These aren't just concepts to understand intellectually. They're practical tools that can transform your entire experience of reality. You now have the information audit to break free from repetitive mental patterns, the neuroplasticity principles, to make lasting change stick, the consciousness expansion exercise to access the immaterial realm, and the attention inventory to shift from forced creation to aligned flow. The choice is now entirely yours. You can return to the familiar patterns of the predictable self, or you can step into the quantum version of yourself that operates from infinite possibility rather than material limitation. I want you to implement all 4 techniques for the next 7 days and document what changes. Comment below which technique surprised you the most. I read every comment. And if you're ready to go deeper, check out my video, The Observer Breath, How to Engineer Reality from Within, where I reveal the complete 4-phase quantum entanglement breathing system that can connect you to any person or outcome across space and time. But first, hit that subscribe button if you're ready to break free from the predictable self forever.